Well, today we came off a quick roundtable around the importance of data in the processes, especially in cell and gene therapy, joined by a really good panel here with Jonathan, Becky, and Jeff, talking about various topics and a pretty diverse audience on how can we gather the data, the importance of data, all the issues surrounding data, and we used sickle cell disease as a kind of case study, which allowed for a better discussion. I think the next steps here probably are, once we hear from everyone on our panel, what do we do next? Where do we go from here?
Yeah, it was really interesting to use sickle cell patients as our case study. So we all know that there are a lot of different treatment options for patients with sickle cell disease. You can go hydroxyurea, you can do your red cell exchanges, bone marrow transplant, and now these gene therapies. And it was interesting to see, where we may have data, depending on which treatment line the patient might be going under, who the stakeholders are to collecting and sharing that data, and what their motivations might be for sharing it more broadly, so we can make innovations on how we handle these patients.
Yeah, I think it was, as we ended that idea of creating a model with sickle cell that we can apply to other therapies, other diseases, so that we can hopefully drive collaboration between organizations. If we can show the model works, that increases our probability of getting adoption, which will be good for our patients.
Well, and I think we identified a couple of shots on goal.
Yeah.
Where existing databases, CIMVT. Thank you. I never can get that right. Even looking, I'm intrigued by the idea of talking to some of the hospitals we're doing therapeutic apheresis with and developing some kind of agreements around the use of that data, de-identified, just looking at real world treatment trends. How many repeat cycles do these patients go through? Because I think there's a larger question about data around, especially around donor or starting material,
Yes.
whether it's the donor or the patient. So many questions about that in the cell and gene therapy space, but getting to a point where we can tackle that has just been such a challenge. We describe the challenge all the time, but we've not really been able to make progress on it. And if we can use this as a framework to demonstrate how we can make progress, I think that is one step closer to really tackling some of these bigger questions.
It would be helpful to directly have the conversation with the clinical providers to say, hey, what are the barriers for you to provide this data to us? I'm sure they would agree with the goal to say, hey, we want to make sure that these patients are going down the correct treatment path as efficiently as possible, lowest cost possible. But I'm sure that they've got some barriers, whether it be operational or resource constraints to giving us that. But maybe after those conversations, we can find partners like us to help them kind of get over that.
As the conversations are going on, and even as we're talking here, the quick phrase that comes to mind is setting standards. And I think that's one of the big things that's missing, is there are no standards for whether it's the starting material or whether it's how you want to collect data and how you want to get the outcomes and see how it works. So maybe the key takeaway from here is, how do we set standards so that everyone is operating from a similar set of guidelines and rules? And the model discussion, which we said was, let's take sickle cell as the model, look at the databases and see where we come from. So hopefully a year from now or even earlier, as we come back to this forum, we actually have actioned something versus the conversations we've had for the last year or so. So thank you all for the conversations. And I think one of the things that really made sense was, none of us felt that this couldn't be done.
Right.
I think everyone knows it can be done. It's just like, let's move.
That's our first start.
Right. Thank you.